hope this holds. If I were to write a horror movie right now, I would call it The Hum. And it would be the story of a man driven to the brink of insanity by a sound that may not actually be there. It's less of a sound, in fact, than a vibration. And what makes it so aversive is it's not a static vibration. It is there is a sort of oscillatory quality to it, a throb, a sort of probably. Again, it's not totally clear whether this vibration actually exists, but it is clear that it is driving this guy fucking crazy. And he's not forced to endure the hum. He's not imprisoned in some underground dungeon or some deep pit by an axe-wielding maniac. No, where he's subjected to the hum, where I'm subjected to the hum, because of course this is my story. I can only ever tell my stories. Sometimes I think I have an extremely vivid imagination, but other times I feel like I have no imagination at all because I can only ever tell what's actually happening with me. And in this case, what's happening with me, where the hum is not constant. It would be easier in some ways, I think, if it was constant, but it's not constant. It comes and it goes, and where it comes and goes, where my prison is here behind me. This $10 million penthouse apartment in the West Village of Manhattan. It's a very luxurious prison. But it does feel like a prison, and the hum can feel like torture a lot of the time. I've been here for almost 6 months now, and it has been a constant struggle. Largely because of my OCD, maybe entirely because of my OCD, but one of the many questions that would make the hum, I think, such a rich psychological thriller is the question of how much of this ultimately is reality versus how much of it is in my own head. And OCD makes it very, very difficult to tell that. In a sense, I think OCD is you lose that ability to discern. Of course, at a deeper level, I think it's always a choice. It's always a choice. What we choose to believe is reality versus our own subjective view. And in fact, I don't think you can make a meaningful distinction. We only ever have our own subjective viewpoint. There's never any breaking out of that. And maybe that is the ultimate prison. Because that's always been my biggest fear. Like my biggest my biggest irrational fear, I guess I would say, is being buried alive. Being buried alive seems uniquely terrifying, and I think that is the human condition. We're all locked in our own subjective experience, and yet somehow we have the ability to connect with others and share with others, and clearly that's what I value about this, whatever this is. But you can't experience my experience. I feel like this is like an 8th grade stoner revelation, but I've never been able to fully put that one aside because it does seem so fundamental. And maybe because my own experience, as I get older and older, I do appreciate the fact that my own experience does seem to be extreme. It's kind of remarkable that I didn't really realize that until recently. But I don't think most people experience the intensity of emotion. There's the intensity of experience. Both the fear and the joy, the wonder and the terror. And really, they all come from the same source, which is the fundamental uncertainty of everything. I was once, I've only ever done 2 psychedelic trips where there's been a guide there. I prefer to do it without a guide, but one of them, I had taken a very large dose of mushrooms, and I was trying to decide whether I should take even more. Because I was tripping pretty hard, but this was a guided journey. I was paying for it. I wanted to go deep, and I felt like maybe I should go deeper. And so I asked this guy who has a ton of experience, this goddamn fucking thing. So the issue is I don't want to see myself. which I guess, sure, we'll turn that into this too. So I'm covering up the screen so that I can't see myself, or attempting to. And I think am I now angled too low? Let's see. Yeah, we'll just troubleshoot this right now in real time. No, that'll be okay. Yeah, we'll use this. Of course I don't want to see myself, because what I want from this is to lose myself in a state of not dissociation, but total connection, so that there is no separation. There is no part of my brain that's analyzing how it's going, what I'm saying, whether you're following. I'm just in it. And if I can see myself on the screen, that makes it impossible. So on this trip, on a very large dose of mushrooms, debating whether to take more mushrooms, I asked this guide, I was like, well, you've guided a ton of people. What do you think? Do you think, like, I'm pretty deep in right now. Should I just stay with this, or do you think I should take more? And he just smiled and shrugged, and he said, no one can tell you what will happen if you take more or if you don't take more. That's where the magic is. And that is where the magic is, of course, in the uncertainty. And I think I have a deeper appreciation of magic, or maybe it just gives me a level of joy. The mysteries. I mean, when I was a little kid growing up, my father had a massive and ever-growing collection of Time Life books. Time Life published, I don't know if they still do, series of books, 8, 10 volumes, large hardcovers, maybe 12 inches by 9 inches, on different subjects. The Civil War, the Dark Ages, dinosaurs. And my favorite was Unsolved Mysteries. This was long before the TV show of the same name, and long before the internet. And to actually be able to lay my hand on these mysteries and flip through was completely absorbing. And I loved the fact that sometimes the answer to these mysteries turned out to be simply that something that we thought, I'm going to let this one go. But yeah, in a sense, I love uncertainty, I love the magic, I love the mystery, and yet OCD seeks to completely crush, destroy any degree of uncertainty. And that's true of every type of OCD. Classic contamination fear. You wash your hands and wash your hands and wash your hands so that you're certain you're perfectly clean. People without OCD, at a certain point, they just don't worry about it. They've washed their hands, good enough. But people with OCD, what if they missed a spot? The soap says 99.9% antibacterial. What if this is the 0.1%? You can't tolerate that degree of uncertainty. And so you repeat the action, or the internal action, the thinking, the obsessing, until you've convinced yourself you're certain. But the problem is you can't, of course. Certainty doesn't exist. It's a concept in the human mind. There's no actual way to be certain. And so the more you try to find certainty, the less you can find it, the more anxious you get. And for me, the OCD manifests with decision making, with obsessing over even minor choices, because I want to be certain I am making the right choice, which is fucking insane. There's nothing you can be less certain of in the world than, are you making the right choice? People say hindsight is 20/20, but that's bullshit. Even hindsight is not 20/20, because yes, if I choose this action, I chose to do this, talk about this today in class, instead of something Carl had suggested, which was talking about stand-up comedy. And perhaps when I'm done with this, I can look back and say, oh yeah, I'm happy with how that went. I made the right choice. But of course I can't know that, because I don't know what would have happened if I had talked about stand-up. You can never know what would have happened if you'd chosen the other path. There is no way to know you're making the right choice, not even in hindsight. And of course, I realize this, I'm saying this, but there's a part of me that refuses to accept that will continue to try to figure something out and achieve a certainty that's not possible, and that I, above everyone else, should be well aware is impossible, because I've been trying for 18 years. That's when the OCD started, 18 years ago. For 18 years, I've been getting trapped continually in trying to make perfect decisions. And the number of times I've made a decision and felt like, yeah, I got it totally right, and then it's just over is zero. Let me clarify that. I make many decisions without obsessing. Many decisions. Putting on this shirt was not trouble for me, though when I first developed the OCD, even decisions like this, what to wear, were fertile ground for the OCD. The OCD would glom onto that. Back in 2003, I could spend 45 minutes trying to decide which shirt to wear, and I'd put on a shirt, and I'd take off a shirt, and I'd put on a shirt, I'd put on another shirt, then I'd put back on the first shirt, then I'd put back on the second shirt. And part of what has helped with the OCD has been psychedelics. And part of how psychedelics have helped is by, getting a little bit of noise from, I don't know if someone's unmuted. Sound. So part of how psychedelics have helped have been having these experiences, often on high doses, where I see that I can't control. Things are too overwhelming. Things are just the intensity of the experience shows me that I can't control. Makes it blindingly obvious. And the harder I try to control, the more terrifying things get until finally I let go and things are okay. That's the thing. Things have never not been okay when I let go. Part of that may be a reflection of my privilege. A white dude, middle-class family, loving parents. And part of that may also be, I think it would be called survivorship bias, meaning that the time when things don't work out, I might not be around to talk about it into a webcam. But yeah, psychedelics have been helpful, and I don't have trouble putting on shirts and that sort of thing. But I do still have trouble, particularly with one type of decisions related to housing, where I'm going to live. And part of that has to do with, I believe, this desire to control my environment. And that's why the hum is such a mind fuck, because I can't fucking control it, because it comes and it goes of its own accord, or really the accord of the Rite Aid, because it's connected to, I've determined it is the HVAC unit for the Rite Aid on the ground floor of this building. And it's there right now. It's quite loud right now, or quite present, that vibration. That vibration. That vibration. And so this has been the decision that has tormented me intermittently for the past 6 months since I've moved into this penthouse is, should I leave? Because it's not an underground dungeon. The door is unlocked. The door is literally unlocked because it's a doorman building, so I don't bother locking the door to the unit. I can walk outside at any time, and I can go somewhere else. I could go anywhere else. That's the thing. I don't have to be anywhere now. Well, I do have to be in New York right now, because stand-up comedy, which I had all but written off, has suddenly become vital to me. And this is where I do it, in the city. This is where I get the stage time. And the reason it's become vital to me is because I have stopped doing stand-up comedy. Instead, I'm getting on stage and talking like this. And in 4 hours from now, that's exactly what I'll be doing at a comedy club. So that's one thing that keeps me in New York. But even within New York, there's other places I could go. I could go back to my apartment. My apartment in Brooklyn Heights. An apartment that, yeah, I would say I love it. Or I would say I'm comfortable there. Or I would say I'm often not comfortable there, but not for reasons that have to do with the apartment. This is part of the challenge of this situation is how much of my struggle, how much of my suffering is due to this apartment, is due to the hum, versus how much of it is just me, wherever I am. And also how much of it is maybe not wherever I am, how much of it is New York. Because there's these classic studies where you put a rat in a cage, you give it a lever that it can hit to get a cocaine pellet, and the rat will hit that lever to the exclusion of everything else. It'll just hit that lever, hit that lever, hit that lever. It'll stop eating, it'll stop drinking, and eventually it will die. But more recently, researchers pointed out a massive limitation with that study, which is that rats do not naturally live in cages. They're actually wide-ranging, curious animals. And so if you put a rat in its natural habitat, I don't know what its natural habitat comprises, but not a cage, vegetation, puddles, whatever, and other rats to socialize with, food to forage for, and the lever with the cocaine pellet dispenser. What happens in that environment is the rats, yes, they will hit the lever, they will get some cocaine, but then they'll go play with other rats, or they'll swim, or they'll run around, they'll do whatever. And I think of that in this city, that in a way, yeah, I mean, you could say we're rats in cages, but the actual rats in New York get far more territory than we do. I mean, I see them running around outside. And maybe it's this environment so cut off from nature. Because nature is the thing that, yeah, it's hard to even put it into words what it does for me. I think maybe that's what it does for me, is it takes me out of words. It takes me into this realm of pure experience. This city, New York, it's such a fucking word city, it's such a brain city, such a cerebral cortex city. It's just like, here my body is just a vehicle for transporting my brain and my mouth. When I'm by the ocean, I'm just there, and everything slows down. And one advantage of this penthouse is it also comes with a, sorry, I swear I've not been snorting cocaine pellets, a little bit of a cold maybe. It comes with a car. So I'm house sitting. I mean, house sitting implies that I'm rendering some service. I'm staying for free in an apartment, this apartment, my friend's apartment, and he also lets me use his valet parked car, and I've been using that car to go on day hikes regularly. And I went, I obsess about these hikes, but in a sort of fun, positive way, in terms of picking which day am I going to go on a hike. In this most recent week, it was clear Tuesday. Tuesday was going to be the day to go on the hike. And I look forward to it, and I relish the prospects of it, and I'm researching which trails I'm going to go on, and I'm so excited. And I did. I went on my hike Tuesday, and it was nice. I mean, it was really nice. And then I woke up Wednesday here, which was another beautiful day. And I had decided, because I'd been considering, I was like, maybe I'll go for a hike again tomorrow, but no, I have work to do. I have so much fucking work to do. Well, that's the problem. I don't have to do any work. My income, my full-time income for the past 4 years has been derived from performance, but that is not happening. I mean, I'm doing stand-up, but that doesn't really pay anything. Solo show performance, all of those bookings were canceled. But since I'm not paying rent, and I haven't paid rent for the duration of the pandemic, I'm okay financially for now, and I don't have any definite obligations. And so it was like, I could go for a hike again on Wednesday, but I want to be creating. I want to be sharing. I want to be putting things out there. One, because I do need to reestablish some sort of career or establish a new career. And two, because I need to do this. I once took a very large dose of LSD on a beach in Thailand, which I feel like is a very privileged, I don't know. I feel like if I was watching this, I'd be like, yeah, of course you did. Look at you. Fucking privileged motherfucker. But it was a beautiful experience. I was in love. Not in love to the extent that I was in love with the woman where the relationship ended in 2003. That broke my heart and led to the OCD, because I didn't have OCD before that relationship. I had a lot of other shit. I had a lot of anxiety. I had insomnia, but I didn't have OCD. I didn't have any trouble making decisions. The woman I was in love with on the beach in Thailand, this was 2011. It wasn't that magnitude of love. And part of what allowed me to love her was it had an expiration date. we were both traveling in Thailand. She's she's Dutch. She lives in Switzerland, and I was going to go back here. So it was kind of easy to open my heart and to say yes to this. And she was great. She is great. Predictably, when she came to visit me in New York, because she didn't know it had an expiration date. I mean, it wasn't like I was totally conscious of it, but yeah, it's easy to say yes to things if it feels like there's some limitation to them. So when she came to visit me in New York later, it was not a good visit. But perhaps the peak of our relationship, the 8 or 9 weeks we were in Thailand together, was on this beach on a very large dose of LSD. And I'd wandered off alone. I'd wandered off alone because I was feeling the fear. This fear that comes up in psychedelic experiences, but increasingly comes up at other times also. And I think that has always been there, which is this fear that there is something very, very, very dark that I'm avoiding. Some horrific trauma, maybe, or maybe I don't know what it is. The sense that something happened. Maybe not even in my lifetime. Maybe it's epigenetic trauma. I don't know. And some psychedelic experiences, when I first began working with psychedelics, this would often come up and I'd be like, oh God, I can't see this terrible thing, whatever it is, it'll destroy me. And I would try to hold on and maintain control of the experience, but eventually I'd get exhausted and I'd let go and I'd say, okay, just show it to me. Show it to me, whatever it is, whatever horrible thing, show it to me. And there'd be nothing there. It was kind of like, a little kid who thinks, or me, who thinks there's a monster under the bed. There's a fucking monster under the bed. I can't look under the bed. If I look under the bed, I'm going to see the monster. I can't look under the bed. And finally, I look under the bed, and there's no monster there. It's just a bunch of dust, a suspiciously wadded up plug of Kleenex, but no monster. Anyway, I was having this experience on the beach in Thailand, this sense of, something is going to come up. And because by that point I'd had quite a bit of psychedelic experience, I knew the best thing to do was to, just sit with it. So I went off alone and I was meditating. And nothing came up. Eventually that fear passed. And I got up and I started walking down the beach. And another friend, not the woman I was in love with, but a friend of ours who was also with us on this remote beach taking LSD, we started talking. And she said something to me, which I've since learned is a quote from, I don't know who it's, Khalil Gibran maybe, maybe the Prophet, but the quote was, "The thirst that comes when the well is full is the thirst that is unquenchable." And it struck me, not least because I was on 7 hits of LSD, it struck me as profound, but also occult, mysterious. It was like I understood it at some deep level, but I couldn't make sense of it in my mind. And perhaps because I was on 7 hits of LSD, this memory is really seared into my brain. And in the subsequent 10 years since that moment on that beach in Thailand, I've thought back to that moment. I could ask her, my friend, we're still in touch, but what she thinks it means or why she said it to me, but I haven't. I've just kind of contemplated it. Not a lot, but every once in a while it'll pop into my head. And a couple of months ago, it came to me. I was in nature, I was stoned, and it came to me. Now, first, let me say, after it came to me, I looked up this quote, and the standard interpretation is basically, it has to do with sort of greed, that someone who, if your needs are met and you still feel like, I need more, I need more, it's never going to be enough. According to the internet, that is the interpretation. But I came up with a very different interpretation for myself, because the question I've been contemplating intermittently for a decade is, what is the thirst that is unquenchable for me? In a couple of months, it came to me. This is the thirst that is unquenchable. The need to create and share. This is the thing that no matter how much of it I do, I can never do enough. That whether there was any reward in it, any adulation, money, love, I would still do it. This is the thing that is unquenchable for me. And it felt wonderful when I realized that. And it still does when I think about it. Because it's something that it's inexhaustible. And so, yeah, I could leave New York. I could stay at a friend's beach house in Cape Cod, another opportunity to stay rent-free someplace. But I've been feeling, even with the hum, I should stay here because I want to create. Yes, I can create in Cape Cod, but I'm not going to get the stage time. I'm not going to get the live audience. And that suddenly feels like it's an essential part of this. But the hum can be challenging. The hum can be very challenging. And, you know, here, another 8th grade stoner revelation. We're all fucking vibration, man. And we are. I mean, it is all vibration. That's everything has a periodicity, if I'm pronouncing that word right. Atoms, molecules, everything. And so this particular vibration of the hum, this particular how is that in training with my own vibration? My own brain waves are vibrations. How is that impacting it? Maybe part of the struggle I've been enduring is simply there is a physical explanation that I'm being bombarded with these vibrations that somehow work their way into my brain and kind of just muck things up. Maybe I should leave here. Maybe I should go back to my apartment in Brooklyn Heights. Maybe I should leave New York. I mean, I am going to leave New York soon. I do need more nature. But it's made me vulnerable, this hum, to OCD and my, again, particularly potent strain of OCD of where should I go? What should I do? I mean, there is an irony in that someone who has decision-making OCD is confronted sounds like it's a burden, blessed with an unusual number of decisions. Most people, I'm 47, particularly at this age, most people do not have the luxury of complete freedom to go where they want to go, to do what they want to do. They're constrained by family, career. But yeah, those two aspects of my life, the two central aspects, are not constraining because they're quite, they're not locked in. They're not locked in. There have been times when I've thought, I should just fucking adopt a kid or something. One, because I love kids, and I know it's very easy to say if you're not a parent that you think you'd be a good parent, but I think I'd be a good parent just based on how I am with my nephews and nieces, which I also realize is maybe not a good predictor because I just get the good parts with my nephews and nieces. I don't have to deal with changing diapers, crying when they skin their knees. But anyway, the point is, having another human entirely dependent on me, that will limit my choices. And that might be, but it also feels like I don't want to limit my choices. I don't want to limit my choices because it feels like it's like subjecting myself to house arrest in a way, artificially constraining myself. But it is. If you view OCD as an addiction, which I do, a strategy to avoid fear that works in the very, very short term, because let me say this. I said earlier that, you can't get certainty. You can't be certain you're getting it right, but you can for very brief intervals. It's kind of like a cocaine addict saying, well, you can't be high all the time. Yeah, you can't be high all the time, but when you snort that line, you will feel good for a little bit. And it is similar with OCD. You get these momentary hits of feeling like you've gotten it right. I'll get these momentary hits of feeling like, no, I'm gonna leave this place. I'm gonna go back to my place in Brooklyn. Yes, I'll have to pay rent there. Here is free. But you know what? It feels right. And it will feel right for a minute, 5 minutes, but then the anxiety starts back in. Then the uncertainty comes back. And so, but yeah, in this moment, I guess I'll say the hum has actually been bothering me significantly less over the last week. It's present, and I still hear it. But yeah, at the risk of depriving this of some drama or conflict, whatever the fuck this is, I will say that I actually do feel settled in my decision right now for the first time in 6 months. I feel like I'm gonna stay here at least a couple of more months because I can tolerate it. And I wonder if this has been part of the anguish, because a lot of what has been the anguish has been, again, this question of basically, is the hum tolerable? What I mean by that is this the sort of thing that justifiably makes this place unlivable, or is this just, am I just fighting it too hard? And there's been an inkling that, no, I can live with this. I can live with this. And part of that is because the hum is actually part of a movie franchise. I don't know if any of you are fans, but the first, well, there's been many installments, but probably the high water mark of the franchise for all the fans out there, I'm sure you'll agree, was The Rumble. The Rumble, because I've been saying how comfortable I am in my apartment in Brooklyn Heights, but the truth is when I moved in, I was profoundly uncomfortable because there was a rumble. Even more subsonic than the hum. The hum, there is an auditory component. You can hear it a little bit, though it's more of a vibration. The rumble was entirely a vibration. And where other people can hear the hum, when I have guests over and I ask them, and whenever I have guests over, I ask them, everyone's like, oh yeah, I guess I can hear that. The rumble, no one else could hear. But I could feel it. I could feel it. Every 3, 4, 5 minutes during the day, less frequently at night, there'd be this just very, very deep rumble. Occasionally, it would shake the mirror in my bathroom. So I knew it wasn't all in my mind, even though no one else could discern it in any way. And the rumble, the aversiveness, was heightened immensely when I figured out what it was, which is the fucking subway. I've lived in New York for 23 years, and I think, whenever I say the word subway, I'd say 80% of the time is preceded by the adjective fucking. The fucking subway. The fucking subway, because it turns out the AC trains, they go through what's called the Cranberry Street Tube, the tunnel connecting, under the East River. And based on diagrams I could find, it was very close to my apartment. And this made it so much worse. The last thing I want intruding on the sanctity of my own space is the New York City fucking subway. The subway, it's not been the cause of my greatest suffering in New York, but it has been the most frequent cause of my suffering in New York. And it is, talk about wanting to control things. What a perfect exponent of the lack of control. This thing that, you don't know when it's going to come. Now there are timetables, so it's a little better, but actually they're almost, it's still not, because sometimes it doesn't abide by those, and sometimes the timetable shows, the next train is going to be in 25 minutes, and there's going to be 3 trains in quick succession. The number of hours I've spent waiting for a train and composing in my head the letters I'm going to write to the MTA. Thousands of hours. I had a therapist, Mike Feminella, who said, the subway is your temple. When you go in there, it's just an opportunity to practice surrender. Just practice surrender with whatever comes up. And when I'm in the subway and it's late, I will do that for maybe a minute or two, and then I'll go back to writing the letters in my head. And the substance of the letters is, so it doesn't have to fucking be this way. It doesn't have to fucking be this way, because the subway, many people don't realize this, The subway was a model of efficiency for many years. And then in the 80s, George Pataki, a Republican governor, had to find money in the budget, because this is the mantra of Republicans, is basically, it's crazy to me that we still have that they still have popular support, because essentially the root foundational belief of the Republican Party, at least pre-Trump, is that rich people should have more of their money. And of course, the corollary to that is that non-rich people have less money. Because if rich people are paying less taxes and corporations are paying less taxes, the difference has to come from somewhere, so it comes from people who aren't rich. Maybe not directly in the form of taxes, but in the form of, oh, there's potholes in the streets, so you're driving over and you break an axle, you have to pay for that. That comes out of you. Or you have to wait 40 minutes for the fucking subway. That comes out of you. The rich people aren't taking the subway when the performance fucking sucks. So anyway, Pataki, being a Republican, had to cut taxes on rich people. How do you fund that? He cut the subway budget. And his logic was that, well, the subway is a model of efficiency. It runs flawlessly. We give them hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Why do we need to give them all this money if it runs so well? It's the exact same logic of saying, hey, my teeth are great. Why do I need to go to a dentist? And so, of course, what happens when you stop doing regular maintenance on your teeth or a mass transit system is it starts to deteriorate. And then when you go back to the dentist 10 years later, it's not like, oh yeah, just pay me what you would have paid me for those annual appointments you didn't have and we'll get your teeth in working order. No, it's going to be exponentially more expensive.
Adam, let's stop it there, brother.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, give him a hand. Hey guys, so what we like to do